Hi everybody, thanks for joining me in part two. Um, Part two covers intellectual merit and broader impacts. We touched on these in part one, but in part two we'll take a deeper dive into intellectual merit and broader impacts, often referred to in the grant world as IM and BI. All right, let's take a look. Let's understand NSF's two merit review criteria at a deeper level. Now, every proposal is evaluated on intellectual merit, and that's its potential to advance knowledge, and broader impacts. That's its potential to benefit society. And here's what's critical, and I'm going to say this more than once, okay? Both criteria are required, and both are given equal weight. You cannot succeed on one criterion alone. Even the most brilliant science will not be funded if it doesn't adequately address broader impacts. And conversely, wonderful education programs won't be funded if the underlying science isn't sound. So these criteria are evaluated together, not separately. Reviewers are specifically asked to consider both throughout your entire proposal, not just in the designated sections. And when reviewing, they're asked 5 basic questions that apply to both criteria. And these are very important, okay? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How will you do it? How will you know if you succeed? And what benefits could result? Your proposal needs to answer these questions clearly for both the scientific work and the broader impacts work if you want it to get funded. So let's take a look at intellectual merit first. Let's break it down. The official definition, again, is the potential to advance knowledge. But what does that really mean? It means you're not just doing competent science. You're adding something now to what humanity knows. This could be advancing understanding within your specific field, or it could be advancing understanding across multiple fields. It might involve creating entirely new knowledge, challenging long-held assumptions, developing novel methods that enable new research, or solving problems that have stymied the field. The key word is advance here. You need to demonstrate that your work will move the needle on human knowledge. This requires you to clearly articulate what don't we currently know, what is the specific gap in knowledge, how will your work fill this gap? And critically, why does this gap matter to science? Simply saying things like will contribute to understanding is too vague. You want to be specific about what knowledge will be advanced and why that matters. Now, reviewers evaluate intellectual merit through 4 lenses. First is significance. They're asking why this research matters. Not to you personally, but to the broader field. What important problem are you addressing? How does solving this problem advance the field? Now, second is innovation. Excuse me. Second is innovation. What's new here? Are you asking new questions, using new approaches, applying techniques in novel ways? Are you challenging conventional wisdom? NSF particularly values transformative research that could shift paradigms. Now, third is feasibility. Can this actually be done? Is your approach sound? Are your methods appropriate for your questions? Is your timeline realistic? Or are you proposing 10 years of work for a 3-year grant? And fourth is expertise. Are you and your team qualified to do this? Do you have a track record of success? Do you have access to the necessary facilities and equipment? Have you thought through potential challenges? A proposal can fail in any of these dimensions. You might have a significant problem, but an infeasible approach. Or you might have a clever method, but lack the expertise to execute it. You want to address all 4 in your proposal. Now, where in your proposal should intellectual merit be addressed? This is really important. The main location is in your project description. It goes in that project summary. Okay, but the main location is the project description. Okay, but it shouldn't be isolated to one paragraph labeled intellectual merit like it is in the project summary. Instead, it should be woven throughout your narrative. So in your introduction and background, you want to establish why your problem is significant. Okay, this speaks to intellectual merit. In your literature review, you want to demonstrate the knowledge gap. That's intellectual merit. When you state your research questions and objectives, you want to make it clear what knowledge you're seeking. That's intellectual merit. Okay, when you describe your methodology, show that your approaches are appropriate and sound. That's part of intellectual merit too. Your expected outcomes should explicitly state how knowledge will be advanced. If you have prior NSF support, your results from that work demonstrate your capability to produce intellectual merit. Okay, even your budget is going to reflect intellectual merit. Are you allocating resources appropriate for the research that you're proposing? The point here is that intellectual merit isn't a box check. It's the scientific foundation of your entire proposal, and reviewers should see it on every page. Okay, let's look at examples of strong intellectual merit statements. Okay, example 1, you can read it, but it clearly states what the project will do. It's going to test a new theory. It identifies what existing framework is being challenged, the energy landscape model. Most importantly, it explains the potential impact. That's fundamentally changing our understanding of protein folding with specific downstream implications for drugs, disease, and structure prediction. Okay, that's advancing knowledge. That's good. Okay, example 2 describes a methodological advance, a new computational approach. It explains the current limitation being overcome and what new capabilities the method will enable, detecting rare populations and tracing lineages. Notice it explicitly says this will make intractable questions tractable. Okay, that's advancement. Now, example 3 shows interdisciplinary work. It describes the integration of two fields, quantum mechanics and machine learning, and explains what new knowledge will emerge, mechanisms of catalysis. It then points to broader implications, new research directions in biocatalyst design. Now, each example here is specific about the knowledge gap, the approach, and the advancement that's going to result. Now let's look at some weak intellectual merit statements and how to fix them. Okay, the first example is too vague. You're going to contribute to understanding of climate change. That could mean just about anything. What specific aspect of climate change? What understanding will be contributed? The better version is specific. You're going to quantify permafrost methane, resolve a 30% uncertainty, impact on climate models. Okay, that's concrete advancement. The second example is purely incremental, adding variables to a model. Okay, on its own, that's not going to be compelling to a panelist. But when you explain why those variables matter, they'll enable prediction of rare events that current models miss. Now you're advancing knowledge in a meaningful way. And the third example is purely descriptive. We'll characterize properties. Characterization alone isn't intellectual merit, but when you connect it to why those properties matter, okay, revealing structure property relationships for next generation batteries, you've shown how knowledge will advance and why it matters. The pattern here: weak examples describe activities without explaining the significance or impact on knowledge. Strong examples connect activities to specific knowledge advances. Okay, let's turn to broader impacts now. Again, the official definition is the potential to benefit society and contribute to specific desired societal outcomes. The key word here is outcomes. NSF isn't looking for a list of activities. They want to know what societal benefit is going to result. Okay, what's the difference? Okay, publishing papers is an activity that scientists and engineers and faculty do. Making data publicly accessible in a format that enables other researchers to make discoveries, that's an outcome that benefits the research community. Now here's another one. Training students is an activity. Increasing the representation of students from economically disadvantaged communities and adults in STEM fields where they're currently less than 10% of practitioners, that's an outcome that benefits society by developing workforce. Okay? Giving talks is an activity. Improving water quality for specific communities, that's an outcome that benefits society. Many weak, broader impact statements read like lists. For example, we will publish, present, train students, maintain a website. That's not enough. You need to explain who benefits, how do they benefit, what societal outcome results will be. You want to connect your activities to tangible benefits for real people or communities or the scientific enterprise. All right. NSF provides some examples of broader impacts. This list is not exhaustive or prescriptive. Let's walk through these categories. Okay, they're listed here. Okay, there's 10 of them. Number 1, full participation of economically disadvantaged groups in STEM. This could mean recruiting and retaining people from these groups in your field. Okay, number 2, improving STEM education. This could be developing curriculum, training teachers, or improving teaching methods. Number 3, public science literacy. Okay, things like engaging the public with science, science communication, citizen science. Number 4, improving well-being. This could be health outcomes, environmental quality, safety. Number 5, STEM workforce development, training the next generation of scientists and engineers. Number 6, partnerships, collaborations between academia and industry or with international partners. Number 7, national security, things like cybersecurity research. Number 8, economic competitiveness, research that could lead to new industries or economic growth. Number 9, informing public policy, providing evidence for policymakers. And number 10, research infrastructure, creating tools, databases, or facilities others can use. These are just some examples. Your broader impacts don't have to fit neatly into one category, and you can address outcomes not on this list, of course. You want to choose approaches that genuinely benefit your project. So super important. And I'm a little redundant in this section, and that's done on purpose because these are things, broader impacts are things that a lot of proposal writers struggle with sometimes. You have a lot of subject matter expertise in your particular discipline, but when it comes to writing broader impacts, it's important to really, really dig into this stuff and figure it out. All right. Let's talk about broader impacts. Again, a little redundancy, but this is where many proposals fall short. Again, it's one of 2 merit review criteria, and that other one is intellectual merit. We know about that. Okay. And again, these criteria are given equal weight in review. Both are necessary. Neither alone is sufficient. Okay. And again, redundancy. What are they? They're about the potential of your project to benefit society and contribute to desired societal outcomes. Notice I said outcomes, not just activities. Again, we're stressing this. It's not optional. Every proposal must address broader impacts again. A common myth is that broader impacts means education and outreach. Again, that's just one approach. But there's many valid ways to address broader impacts. The key, again, is connecting your activities to tangible societal benefits. NSF provides those examples. We went through some of them already. In your proposal, okay, you must have a separate section labeled broader impacts. Must. And that exact header must appear on its own line. That's different than intellectual merit. Again, we said intellectual merit did not have to have a separate section in your proposal. Most of the time it doesn't. If you got room, maybe you can put it in if you want. But broader impacts must have a separate section. It has to be labeled properly, and you need that broader impact statement following the label. Okay, so let's dig even a little deeper into how to do this well. We're going deeper now. Okay, 3 general pathways. We've kind of talked about these. I don't think we've listed them quite this way yet. But there's 3 general pathways you want to think about when it comes to achieving your broader impacts. All of them are valid. Okay, pathway 1 is through the research itself. Okay, some research is going to directly address societal needs. If you're working on renewable energy, water purification, disease treatment, or climate resilience, the research itself has some pretty obvious broader impacts. You don't want to take those for granted, though. You still need to articulate who benefits and how. But the connection is direct, maybe, for some like these. Okay, pathway 2 is through activities directly related to your research. Maybe you're doing fundamental research that doesn't have immediate applications, but you're developing some tools, some databases, or some methods that will enable other researchers. Or you're engaging stakeholders, community members, practitioners, policymakers in your research process. Okay, these activities extend the impact of your research beyond your own lab. Pathway 3 is through complementary activities. These are additional activities that you undertake. Things like educational programs, outreach to schools, science communication to the public. They're not the research itself, but they're supported by your grant and contribute to societal goals. The key here is to choose pathways that authentically fit your project. You don't want to force an education component if it doesn't make sense. But do think creatively about how your work connects to societal benefit. And these 3 pathways are a good way to start thinking about those. Okay, we said you have to have a broader impact section in your project description and in your project summary. What must your broader impact section contain? Okay, there's 4 elements. First, you have to have clear goals. What specific societal outcomes are you aiming for? Benefit society is not specific enough. Increase participation of economically disadvantaged students in engineering, or provide data tools for climate researchers. Those are specific outcomes. Those are good. Second, specific activities. What will you actually do? Engage with students, too vague. Recruit 20 economically disadvantaged high school students for summer research experiences with structured mentoring. That's good, that's specific. Third, you need a clear connection between activities and outcomes. How will those summer research experiences lead to increased participation? You want to explain the logic. Students get research experience. They develop relationships with mentors. They see themselves as scientists or engineers, and are more likely to pursue engineering and science degrees. You want to make that connection explicit, and you want to say it. You may think it, and you may think others are going to think it, but that doesn't work. Okay? Fourth, you need an assessment or a documentation plan. How are you going to track what you're doing? What metrics are you going to use? For the student example, track how many students complete the program, survey their interest in STEM careers, follow up on college enrollment. NSF wants to see that you've thought through how to evaluate whether your broader impacts are working. Okay, now all of this again must appear in a section labeled Broader Impacts in the project description with that header on its own line. Okay, let's look at strong broader impacts statements here. Now example 1, you can read it. Um, it shows research-based broader impacts. Notice it's specific. Partnership with 3 named tribes in Arizona, addressing water quality crises. It describes activities, community participation in design and testing. It clearly states outcomes. Improve water security for 5,000 specific residents. And it includes assessment, tracking water quality and health outcomes. Now, example 2 is education focused. It's specific. 6-week curriculum module, 5 specific schools, partnership structure. It explains why these schools predominantly economic. Let me try that again. It explains why these schools, predominantly economically disadvantaged populations, addressing underrepresentation in genomics, currently less than 2%. It quantifies 15 teachers trained, 450 students reached annually, and assessment. It surveys and tracking college enrollment. I'm going to take a sip of water here. Oh, that was refreshing. Okay. Example 3 is about infrastructure. It describes what a database with API access and tutorials. It explains who benefits, 100+ research groups with evidence from pilot surveys. It states the outcome, only centralized repository, enabling meta-analysis, currently impossible, accelerating discovery. Now, each example here has specific goals, concrete activities, clear beneficiaries, and assessment plans. Again, super important. Now let's see some weak broader impact statements. Okay. First, too generic. Results will be published and presented. That's what all researchers do. It's not broader impact. The better version adds value. Open access publication ensures public availability. Data deposition serves the broader community. Policy briefs translate to findings for decision makers. Okay, good. Second one, listing activities without outcomes. Students will be trained. On its own, that's not enough. The better version adds context. Recruiting from economically disadvantaged groups, addressing a specific shortage, that's good. Now third, being too vague. Benefits society. Big deal. How? The better version is specific. 40% waste reduction, economic benefits to manufacturers, environmental benefits to nearby communities. Good. Okay, and the fourth one, having no assessment plan or showing lack of commitment with phrases like, if time permits. Ooh, don't ever say that. The better version describes a specific partnership, quantifies the statement, 40 hours, 60 students, and includes assessment, STEM interest surveys. The pattern here, weak examples are generic, they're vague, or they're focused only on activities. Strong examples are specific, they connect outcomes, they identify beneficiaries, and they include assessment. Okay, let's do a little deeper dive now on transforming weak broader impacts into stronger ones. For the training example, starting with graduate students will be trained. This is too weak because it's generic. What makes the strong version work? It's specific. 3 students, not some vague number, not a percentage. If you got 1 and you're going to increase by 100%, that's only 2, right? You want to put numbers in, not percentages, unless you say what those percentages mean. Okay, so 3 students, not some vague number. It explains recruitment, partnerships, professional societies for economically disadvantaged in science. It states what they'll learn, advanced analytical techniques. And most importantly, it provides context about why this matters. There's a critical shortage. Those with economically disadvantaged backgrounds are less than 5% of faculty in this field. That percentage is okay, despite being 30% of undergraduate majors. That's a pipeline problem, and your training directly addresses it. For dissemination, results will be published is weak, because that's expected. Okay, and the strong version adds layers. Open access ensures public availability. Policy briefs translate for specific users, state water managers. Geographic focus, the Colorado River Basin. Evidence, this is evidence of impact pathway, okay? Prior relationships with agencies and quantified benefits. 2 million users affected by the decisions informed by your research. So I think you can see here how each edition makes the broader impacts more concrete, more specific, and more connected to real societal benefit. Okay, let's bust some common myths now about broader impacts. Okay, myth 1. Broader impacts equals education and outreach. Reality, that's one approach, but not the only one. Research infrastructure, workforce development, partnerships, policy impacts are all valid. So again, you want to choose what fits your project. Okay, myth 2. You need a separate education project. The reality? Broader impacts can be integrated into your research. If you're engaging stakeholders, creating tools for others, or addressing problems with direct societal relevance, those can be your broader impacts. Complementary education activities are fine, but not required. Myth 3. More activities equals better. Oh, this is you got to be really careful with this one. Reviewers, savvy reviewers, experienced reviewers want to see quality and feasibility. Proposing to create curriculum, run summer programs, maintain a database, and do science communication might sound impressive. But if you haven't allocated adequate resources and haven't demonstrated you can actually do this, it's going to hurt you. You're better to propose one well-designed activity with clear outcomes. Myth 4. Broader impacts are less important than intellectual merit. Oh, this is another one again. It's very dangerous. This is probably the most dangerous myth. Both criteria are equally weighted. Say that again and again. Many excellent scientific proposals are declined because broader impacts are weak. And myth 5, you can just add broader impacts at the end. The reality, the strongest proposals integrate broader impacts from the beginning. You want to think about societal outcomes as you design your research. All right, how should you structure your broader impacts section? Here's a framework that works well. You can use it or not use it. Okay, but you want to start with an opening, or you could start with an opening that establishes the societal need or the challenge you're addressing. You want to give context. Why does it matter? And if you have data, use it. If it's available, use it. Second, explain the connection. How does your project address this need? Don't assume the connection is obvious. And that is something that we all do. We're all so into our work, we just assume other people are going to get it. You don't want to make that assumption. Third, you want to describe specific activities. What will you actually do? You want to be concrete. Use numbered lists or bullet lists if that's helpful. Okay? And you have room in the proposal. Fourth, you want to articulate outcomes. What societal benefit will result from these activities? You want to be specific about who benefits and how. Fifth, you want to explain assessment. How will you know if you're successful? What metrics will you use? What evaluation methods? Sixth, demonstrate resources and capability. Who on your team has the expertise in this area? Have you done similar work before? What resources are allocated in your budget? So this structure typically requires 1 or 2 pages of a 15-page project description. That may be too much, but it works. Okay, you can place it at the end as a separate section or integrate it through your proposal. But if you integrate it, make sure the header Broader Impacts appears on its own line somewhere so reviewers can find it. You want to use whatever approach feels most natural for your proposal. Okay, assessment is a critical but often overlooked part of broader impacts. Reviewers want to see that you've thought through how to evaluate effectiveness. And this means 2 things: tracking outputs and evaluating outcomes. So let's look at good examples of metrics, okay? Reach 500 high school students across 10 schools. That's specific and trackable. You know exactly whether you hit this target. Train 3 PhD students from economically disadvantaged groups. Specific number, specific population. Make data sets available to estimated 100 plus research groups. You can track downloads, registrations, or usage statistics. Achieve 80% retention rate in a program. This requires tracking who starts and who completes. And again, percentages are good, or you can use percentages, but make sure you tie a number, an actual number to those percentages in a case like this. Improve student STEM interest scores by 1 standard deviation. This requires pre and post measurement using validated instruments. That's good. Now the weak examples. Engage with students. Okay, how many? For how long? Doing what? Train personnel. Who? How many? To do what? Disseminate broadly. To whom? How? Did anyone use it? These are too vague to evaluate. You can't evaluate them. So your assessment plan should specify what metrics you'll use, how you'll collect data, things like surveys, tracking systems, analytics, when you'll evaluate, and if relevant, what baseline you're comparing to. This shows reviewers are serious about broader impacts and will be accountable for achieving them. Okay, both merit review criteria appear throughout your entire proposal, not just in the project description. Now, we've said that over and over again, but let's think about where else they should show up. In your budget and budget justification. We'll talk about those pieces later in part 3 in detail. But in your budget and your budget justification, you need resources for both research activities and broader impact activities. If you're proposing to run summer programs but haven't budgeted for student stipends, materials, or evaluation, reviewers are going to notice that. If you're proposing to create a database but haven't budgeted for web hosting and maintenance, that could be a red flag. Both intellectual merit activities and broader impact activities need adequate support. In facilities and resources, you want to describe both research infrastructure and broader impacts on infrastructure. If you're partnering with schools, mention their facilities. In results from prior NSF support, this is explicitly required to have 2 separate sections, one discussing intellectual merit or prior work, one discussing broader impacts. This is actually specified in that PAPPG document. In biographical sketches, you want to demonstrate expertise for both also. If you're proposing education activities, show relevant experience, things like teaching, mentoring, curriculum development. If proposing community partnerships, show you've done it before or somebody on your team has done it. The point is that both criteria should be evident in every section of your proposal. Reviewers are looking for consistency. Do your proposed activities align with your expertise? Do your resources match your plans? And proposals get declined when there's a mismatch, so be careful with this. Another sip of water time for me. Another refreshing sip. All right. What's next? Let's talk about common mistakes for both criteria. Okay? Again, we're kind of beating this thing into the ground, but again, this is what it's all about. Okay, for intellectual merit, the biggest mistake is assuming your work's significance is obvious. It's not. You must explain why your problem matters. Okay? Another common error is not connecting your specific research to the broader field. Sure, you may be advancing knowledge in your narrow area, but why should a physicist review your biology proposal? You want to show broader significance. Okay, next, methods need justification. Don't just describe what you'll do. Explain why that's the right approach. If you're in a field where preliminary data is expected, you need it. And make sure your scope matches your timeline and budget. Again, proposing 10 years of work in a 3-year grant raises feasibility concerns. Now, for broader impacts, the biggest mistake is treating it as an afterthought. Said this before and we'll say it again. If broader impacts are clearly written the night before submission, while intellectual merit got weeks of attention, it shows. The reviewers are going to notice, okay? Generic statements don't work. You want to be specific. Many proposals fail to clearly articulate societal outcomes. They list activities but don't explain the benefit. Sometimes broader impacts are disconnected from the research. An education activity that has nothing to do with the science feels like it's tacked on. It sticks right out. Assessment plans with regards to broader impact are often missing entirely. And always check your budget. If you're proposing major broader impact activities, but they're not in your budget, that's a problem. For both criteria, address all elements. Don't skip feasibility or expertise. And again, you want to ensure consistency across sections. If you mention something in a project description, it should appear in the budget and facilities. Okay, before you submit, okay, run through this checklist for both IM and BI. We'll use the acronyms here. So for intellectual merit, can you clearly state in one sentence what knowledge will be advanced? Okay, intellectual merit. Have you explained why that matters? Not to you, but to the field. Are your methods justified or just described? Is there something innovative about your approach? New questions, new methods, challenging assumptions. Have you demonstrated capability through prior work? Team expertise and available resources. You want to look at your timeline critically. Is this scope realistic? Okay? Those are good ones when it comes to intellectual merit. Okay, now let's look at broader impacts. Again, you want to ask yourself, and others. Okay, have you identified specific outcomes, not just activities? Are those activities concrete? Do you have specific numbers, specific populations, specific approaches? Can you explain the logic connecting your activities to outcomes? Do you have specific metrics and a plan to collect data? Again, look at your budget. Are broader impact activities adequately supported? Is what you're proposing realistic given your time and resources? Okay, so for both criteria, you want to check that they appear consistently throughout your proposal. Does your budget match your project description? Do your biographical sketches demonstrate relevant expertise? And here's a good way to test it. You want to give your project description to a colleague in a different field. Okay, maybe you're writing a engineering proposal. Give it to somebody in the biology department. Okay, because there may be a panelist, the review panelist from the biology department reviewing your proposal. You may have a biologist reviewing an engineering proposal, and vice versa. and ask them, can they understand why your work matters? If not, you need more explanation or significance. And these questions, these are really good questions on this slide. These are going to help you identify gaps before the reviewers do. So have at it. Okay, that's it for part 2. Part 3 will cover additional parts and pieces of an NSF proposal, so watch for that. Thank you.